back to the public, members of public, so that they pay their own views. Nasi Tiripano on the bill, on the Postal and Telecommunications Amendment Bill, HB 10 2025. This bill, like a gazette, on 10 October 2025, the bill number clauses about 29. So as you contribute, we would expect to more identify the specific areas that you would want altered or added or subtracted. Then by rules of engagement, this meeting no go follow the parliament sitting. So it means you enjoy the parliamentary privileges and immunities, and you are free to shandisa whichever language that you are comfortable with. And singaziya pane pakambosangana nalo bhiri. Anyone who's read the bill? One? No. Comrades drunk. Anyone else? Okay. All right. In case you get a revelation after this engagement, not gonna email and chapai query yacho, which is clerk@palzim.gov.zw, clerk small letter C LERK, all in small letters, at palzim PARLZIM.gov.zw. Kunebaya, we've got my written submissions. You could also come and submit to our technical team. They will assist. So that I would ask Honorable Masvingo just to take us through some of the clauses that the bill seeks to ratify. This bill will require to amend the Principal Act, which was an act of 2001. So you can imagine that Tipano Nasi in 2001, back then, Tisina money transfer. Katsina Jiriko Zwanasi, WhatsApp, we do not have internet. So these are some of the aspirations of this bill, to try and make sure that we can regulate. So I will invite Honorable Masvingo to take us through some of the clauses that are in the bill. Please, let's take note. With our contributions to Nanga Piper Tinoda.
Masvingo. Chatara summary yebiura chine clause 29 summarize is written pana. It strengthens Postral's accountability and aligns its board composition with corporate governance standards. Charanga Postral's yakasetwa after 2001, 2009. Saka yafana ile board in the parliament. It's currently operating in a statutory instrument. Some bills really measures. Some people have spoken on Nazareth. I see casting too. Monogona Ram and Akuma. And what is proposed. HHP licensing in the spectrum management. Updates, frameworks to include technology, neutral licenses, and control over orbital resources. Number 3, competition regulation empowers the authority to identify dominant licensees and prevent anti-competitive conduct. Nyaya yema-postal and telecommunication yema-operators ndinochema kuti competition others kazhinji zimbabwe inoita kunge ine ma-players. So this bill will open up the space ichiregulwa ne-portals. Universal Service and Consumer Protection refocuses the Universal Service Fund towards expanding connectivity in unserved areas and establish a complaints tribunal. Pane complaints akawanda anoitika munyaya yema-service providers kunyanya wemafoni. So it has been operating like that without the enabling act ye-parliament. So this bill inoita kuti kana pakaita macomplaints ndona vanhu vanocomplaina kuti data razoexpira zviviri. These are some of these things captured in the bill. Saka it will give kana paita macomplaints poita kuti vanokomplaina vaya vanoitwa tribunal inogara kuti zvirikunyanyiswa nema-consumers ndezvipi zvakanyika zvichiitwa netribunal inenge iri independent. Enforcement and dispute resolution introduces administrative fines, specialized inspectors, mechanisms for the interception of communications for criminal investigations. Portals ichange ine simba rekuisa mafines kune vanenge vachiva kunyanya vanoprovidha ma-service providers economic tier 1, net 1 and others. Clause 2 repeals the existing definitions to include the contemporary concepts such as digital communications, email services, and SIM cards. Clause 3 inserts a new section outlining Act's objectives, including ensuring fair competition, ethical use of ICT, and consumer protection. Like I've mentioned before, consumer protection. Pakati ICT vanhu vachiti vanocomplaina nenyaya yeconsumer protection kuti vanhu they are being ripped nema-service providers. So this act inonge ichibatsira zvakanyanya kuprotecta ma-consumers. Clause 4 portals functions expands the authority's mandate to include numbering, naming those and representing Zimbabwe international. Masimba eportals achawandudzwa since yange ichingooperata iri any special instrument. Now kana yaane kuti parliament yaane masimba akawedzerwa. Board composition, that's clause 5, reconstitute the board with 9 to 11 members, requiring at least half to be women and ensuring a diversity of skills in engineering, law, and finance. Currently, the board raingopikwa na-minister without looking at some of zvinosanganisa vanhu vakawanda. But izvozvo raane mandate yekuti rinofanira kunge rine madzimai, rinofanira kunge raane vanhu vakaita zvemitemo, vakaita zvefinance, so that pavanogara vachiona nezvemaoperations ema-service providers kunenge kuine ruzivo rwakasiyana-siyana muboard macho. Hatichangonongwara kudawo vanhu vanenge vaine nezvewavo. Clause 8 allows the minister to give general policy directions that must be in the national interest, transparent, and non-interfering with portals' quasi-judicial functions. Clause 10 licensing replaces cellular telecommunication license with the broader telecommunications license to accommodate evolving technology. Like what the chairman wataura chiwatanga kuti act yange ichishanda izvinezvi ndeya 2001 and technology is evolved. Kubva papo tane kusina WhatsApp then Facebook kwakusina and some of my emails vananga aripo vanga aripo vanashoma but now almost everyone. Saka takuwandudza mashoko acho kuti cellular telecommunication license. Clause 15 frequency allocation plan requires portals to develop a national frequency allocation plan and establish technical standards for radio communication. Clause 18, economic regulation, prohibits anti-competitive conduct and empowers the authority to determine dominant licensees, who must then provide access to their facilities to other players. Pane nzvimbo dzisingasvike mamwe masaisai, asi kuchibata kana econet chete kana kuchibata network chete. So portals ichange ichigadzirisa kuti in all those areas kunge kuchisvika masaisai kana bhiru rabvumwa neparliament zvakare nemi. Clause 20, Universal Service Fund, amends USF object to include supporting ICT disaster management and assisting needs persons with digital access. Pane mari inoiswa inouya yeUniversal Service Fund inoshanda zvekuwandudza nyaya dzetechnology idzodzo. Saka yakuda kunzi iende kuna vanhu vari need kunyanya kumaruwa. Pane maarea akustorina network hatifanira kuti tinenge tisiya dzimwe zvinhu. Saka Universal Service Fund yakufanira kusvika kuma inofanira kuti inga ichibatsira kunyanya vanhu vari kasara mumashure vaya kunyanya kumaruwa. Clause 23, establish the complaints tribunal for dispute settlement and allows for the inception of communications suspected of involving criminal offences. Clause 24 enhances the minister's power to make regulations that allows portals to impose administrative fines for non-compliance. Kubva kumashure portals yaisavamboita mafines, yaingoraise red flags but now empowered to charge mafines panenge paitika irregularities ataura kumusoro ekuti unfair competition, pakungoti network kungopera but vanhu vasina kunge vachishandisa whatever network yavo kana chii. Saka portals inogona kunge yakufaindisa ma-service providers.
Honorable Masvingo at this juncture, I will invite members of the public, those made up to what to do, their views and opinions. Views and opinions. Member.
Thank you very much. My name is Linda from Desire, the resident of Masvingo. I hereby stand to submit my views in regard to the proposed bill which is before us. But let me first raise a red flag that this meeting was not adequately publicized. I don't know what was the problem, because we just saw the posters yesterday in the morning. We tried to organize, but it was late. I think next time it's good that you use the local structures, maybe the local MPs, the councillors, to mobilize for such bills, because I think they're important for the residents of Masvingo, so that they can contribute. Usually those who come here, Masvingo residents usually attend the bills in numbers, but this one was not notified in time. It is very unfortunate though. Despite that, let me give my submissions. The first thing in this bill, I think there's concentration of power in that bill. The concentration of power, I think the bill is giving a lot of authority on the regulatory authority, and it raises concerns about the abuse and the lack of accountability, especially the board. The minister appoints the board, and I think after consultation with the president, this is what it says. So in that regard, I think there is also need for the contribution or participation of the public in coming up with the numbers or the accurate people who can be members of that board going forward. Like what happens, especially when the public interviews are done in Parliament, the judges are also subjected to interviews by the members of Parliament, the public. I think this is also a criteria that can be used to come up with the board, especially the board of technocrats, which is supposed to be in charge of the telecommunications board. Then the second thing, I think there is going to be a lot of surveillance. I think there are some sections within that bill that I've read, whereby the government may end up accessing the private information of the subscribers or of the citizens. So what we still want to make sure that we affect or we curb whatever we call it, especially the abuse of the networks, the abuse of the cell phones and internet. But there is also supposed to be that freedom whereby our people must be free to air their views and to also debate and communicate without hindrance, especially in the public. There's another thing that I've noted here, the issue of competition regulation. While promoting fair competition is positive, the value criterion determining the dominant licenses might be one of a red flag in that bill. Like currently in Zimbabwe, we have Econet, we have one, Tier 1 is struggling. Not Tier 1 is fluctuating, but Telecell, sorry. We don't even have a Telecell network in Masvingo here, so we can just talk about Econet and the Net 1. So there is supposed to be fair competition amongst the actors that are involved especially in the telecommunications operation business in the country. That too much regulation may deter or may chase away the potential investors who can also compete within the space. Like now, network Econet it's almost about 3 days. And the business will be down. Why? Because there's monopoly in the sector. Those that are there, they can do what they want because they know everyone subscribes to the Econet network. And at the end of the day, we end up losing a lot of business and there will be no communication. You're not going to offer such a personal communication. Because no phone you need to dial the number almost about 20 times. Then I also saw the issue penalties for non-compliance. The introduction of the additional offences and penalties need to be balanced to avoid excessive punitive measures. Yes, there might be some issues that may happen, but let's not be a government that always strives on punishing its own residents on the issues that can require a round table or a discussion or especially dialogue on the front, because some of the penalties may be excessive or may be a hindrance to the conduct of the business in the country. I also think that this bill again, while it is saying there must be around, I think it ends about 9 people, not less than 9 members of the board, and of which half must be women. I don't know the number seems to be odd. I don't know how it is going to be distributed, because maybe if it was 8, it would have been 4, but so maybe the discretion now may raise the minister to appoint maybe 10 so that he can balance the numbers, 5 women, 5 males. So I think when we are drafting a bill, it must not be vague. It must be clear and indicated so that the minister or who may be there by that time may not use his powers to say, I'm now appointing 10 for this term, and the next term I'm appointing 9. if the members that are supposed to be appointed in the board must be 10, let the bill clearly indicates that there is need for 10 members to be within that board. And then I also think, on a positive note, I understand that it is also saying that if the chairperson is a woman, then the vice chairperson automatically must be also a male. So I think on that positive note, it is commendable. Then on another note, I also think some gaps that have not been addressed, especially on the cyber issues. That bill was supposed to assist us in attempting to dig deeper into the cyber issue. I understand there is also a cyber bill, but the Postal and Telecommunications bill was also supposed to address those issues, especially of abuse of the internet and also the cyberbullying, because yes, cyberbullying is a standalone bill. I think we once attended that bill, but let's empower that authority to make sure that everything is addressed, especially the offenses that are committed via the internet, the offenses that are committed via the networks are fully addressed in order to make sure that we protect the subscribers, we protect those people, we protect subscribers whom their secrets can be accessed by individuals who are known and not known. This is my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Thank you very much. My name is Honorable Masvingo. I stand before you representing people with disabilities. And here is our submission to this committee. The Disability Amalgamation Community Trust welcomes the opportunity to make submissions on the Postal and Telecommunications Amendment Bill 2025. As a national disability rights organization, we commend Parliament for seeking to modernize Zimbabwe's communications framework. However, we note with concern in its current form does not adequately address the constitutional and international obligations of the state to ensure accessibility and inclusion of persons with disabilities in the postal and communication services. Section 83 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe obligates the state to take measures to ensure that persons with disabilities have access to information and communication. Zimbabwe is also a state party to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which requires states to promote access to information and communication technologies on an equal basis with others. We have identified some gaps within this amendment bill, Mr. Chair, which we would want to highlight now. The first observation we have made, the bill is using an outdated definition of disability. If you look at clause 2, line 32, the bill defines disabled person in medicalized terms, which is inconsistent with the rights-based approach of the Constitution and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Indeed, even our Persons with Disabilities Act, if you could also look in it, you will find a better definition. This risks excluding persons with psychosocial, intellectual, or temporary disabilities. Now, if we look at clause 3 on the objects of the Act, the objectives focus on efficiency and innovation, but omit explicit commitments for accessibility, affordability, and inclusion of persons with disabilities. The third gap we have identified, after I give the gaps we have identified, we are going also to proffer some amendments which we believe this committee will take into consideration as they finalize these bills. On objects, yes, I've spoken about that. Let's look at the functions of the authority on clause 4. The authority's functions do not include obligations to enforce disability inclusive standards, accessible format, or universal design. On clause 20, Universal Service Fund, the fund's objects are silent on financing assistive technologies, accessible ICT infrastructure, or subsidized tariffs for persons with disabilities. Now, the last gap we identified is on the board composition. That is clause 27. The bill does not guarantee representation of persons with disabilities in governance structures, despite constitutional provisions on inclusivity. Now, I'm going to give, through you, Chair, the proposed amendments to the clauses which we have highlighted, and also some additions which we think will actually make our bill tight. On clause 2, the definition. Replace the definition of disabled persons with persons with disabilities. Means individuals with long-term physical, psychosocial, intellectual, sensory, or other impairments which, in interaction with various barriers, may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. That's the modern definition of disability. When we are referring to persons with disabilities, we no longer say disabled persons, they are persons with disabilities. We also propose that we can add on the definitions accessible format. And accessible format means information provided in Braille, sign language, audio, large print, easy to read, or all other formats usable by persons with disabilities. Because if we don't put this in our law, people will say it's not in the law, it's not our law. So we urge this committee to actually take on board this recommendation. Then we also propose to put on clause 2 the definition of universal design. It means the design of products, environments, programs, and services to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. I will move to clause 3, Mr. Chairman, the object of the Act. We propose that you insert to ensure accessible, affordable, and inclusion of persons with disabilities in all postal and telecommunication services. Also add to promote universal design and assistive technologies in communication sector. I will move to clause 4, Mr. Chairman. We have only identified 5 clauses, so I'm almost about to finish. I'm on clause 4, functions of the authority. Please add on its function to monitor and enforce disability inclusion standards in postal and telecommunication services. And also to ensure that all licensees provide services in accessible formats and promote universal design. And the 3rd edition we are proposing, Chair, to consult representative organizations of persons with disabilities in policy formulation and regulatory decisions. We have seen, Mr. Chair, that most of our laws, they are not consistent with our constitution, which calls for inclusion of persons with disabilities. And we see this as an opportunity with this amendment bill that the inclusion aspect is embodied in all our laws we are to enact as we go ahead. Then the last clause is clause 20, Universal Service Fund. Amended to include to finance assistive technologies and accessible ICT infrastructure for persons with disabilities, and to support community services telephones. These submissions, Mr. Chair, are being made in good faith and as a civic obligation of Disability Amalgamation Community Trust to ensure that our laws are substantively inclusive of persons with disabilities. I so submit, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. For those very profound submissions. Anyone else?
Thank you, Chair. We are in your hands.
Order is overruled. Can we have another presentation? Anyone else? I'm sure you will submit.
Yes, I have seen.
Already.
Thank you. She has requested for a source of both the chair will
Oh, but the hard copy.
Yes, I submitted.
The soft copy.
I will send it.
Yes, honorable get that. Anyone else? Sakadopa pa kumira miti yenga. Kapenda. Aiwa, tukutenda Masvingo. For your time and very profound and prominent submissions at this juncture. Msakumirawo wemawezhira ari pano kuti atiite vote of thanks.
regai ndikutendei ndangopuwa basa shoma shoma. Regai ndikutendei nenguva yemazvipa ndichiuya kuzoteererawo nyaya yebill iyi. Saka ndokutendai zvizhinji. Matosiya mabasa enyu mamuchifanira kudaro muchiita nekuti hapana asina basa raanoita. Asi mipe makangwavo nyaya yemakati regai tinoteerera kuti zvinoenda nekupi. Saka ndokutendai nenguva iyi. Shoko iri ndovimba kuti vamwe muri makanzilasi papa. Roda kuti mugorifambisavo muvamwe saizvozvo handiti. Saka ndokutendai nokuvuya. Handikutenda timu yangu yagara iri pabasa. Masvika henyu.